Hello and welcome everyone to TwinRock Partners webinar on the TwinRock Real Estate Liquidity Fund. Thank you everyone for taking time out of your busy days to be here. Please note that everyone has been muted for the time being. You'll see a Q&A box at the top or bottom of your screen. Feel free to submit questions throughout the presentation and I'll answer them at the end. Also note that there's a raise your hand button. You can click that and it will light up green. If you do that at the end of the presentation, you can ask an audio question, but do note that all participants will hear you. Before we begin, standard disclosures, all forward-looking statements are the fund's expectations and not meant to be used as investment advice. And also note that I'll be referring to the fund as TRELF throughout the presentation, which is the acronym for TwinRock Real Estate Liquidity Fund. So to hop right in, the objective of this fund is to offer investors steady income, increased liquidity, strong returns, and the ability to weather a future recession. We'll do that by investing in 3 asset categories, primarily triple net lease properties, as well as some multifamily and student housing. The opportunity is to, again, invest in assets that are immediately income producing, as well as to participate in a fund that is already seeded with properties. So TwinRock Partners has seeded the offering with 2 properties that are already owned and operated by us. I'll go through those properties later in the presentation and give you the opportunity that they present. Additionally, transparency, we're looking to have an annual audit at the end of the lockup period, the redemption period, or when we potentially convert to digital shares in the future. And that will be done by a third party, and then after that time, we'll have quarterly NAV updates. So if you've invested in private placements in the past, sometimes they'll just hold your money until they return it without much transparency. We're looking to, again, provide quarterly updates. You can always find your investment in our investor portal and see distributions, tax information, emails that we've sent you, as well as the current value of your position. Return metrics, we're looking at a 12 to 14% IRR on an annually compounded basis due to the nature of our asset classes. Additionally, managers, we've got 80+ years of real estate experience, as well as a current investor base of highly sophisticated investors, many of who are real estate professionals themselves, and those who TwinRock Partner takes the opinion of very seriously. So we do value the input from our investors as to how our funds are performing and what investors are looking for. To touch on our strategy, again, we're looking at primarily triple net lease assets that are backed by credit tenants. We're also looking for properties that have a WALT of 8+ years, WALT standing for weighted average lease term. That is to, again, provide steady income to investors and also to lock in tenants during what could be a potential downturn at some point in the next 6 to 8 years. Multifamily in markets that we have existing experience. So we've been in Nevada for 7+ years, and in Oklahoma for 5+ years. So those are markets we feel very comfortable in. We have 5 multifamily assets in Oklahoma currently. We're actually getting ready to sell one, and I'll go through that as well later in the presentation, but we're seeing really good numbers there. Student housing and select supply constrained markets. So if we did find the right opportunity, we've got a couple of student housing properties as well. We know what to look for there, and especially in markets that we already have experience, Missouri, as well as Arkansas, we might look to purchase an asset in the future. So to touch on the assets that are already in the fund, The row at Arkansas is an 80-unit, 320-bed student housing complex in Fayetteville, Arkansas, only a couple miles from the University of Arkansas. This asset, only a minority interest in the LLC has been contributed to the fund. However, we do have investors that at this point just want to see liquidity, and so they've indicated to us that they'd be willing to sell their position in the LLC for about 30% below the appraised value. And again, that appraised value is in our investor portal, and I'm happy to provide it to any of you on the call who might like to look into that further. Then the flats on May, 100% interest of that was contributed to the fund. Right before we contributed it to the fund, we received an offer to sell at 5% above the appraised value. That's also on the investor portal. So aligning with investors by contributing that asset that's wholly owned by the managers by TwinRock and its managers to the fund. Additionally, some prospective properties that we may look at purchasing in the future. 1050 West Hamden is multi-tenant triple net lease infill industrial center in Inglewood, Colorado. So if any of you on the call are familiar with Colorado, Inglewood is right near Greenwood Village, which is an up and coming suburb of Denver. Great young professionals, a lot of retail, restaurants, things of that nature. This property has the metrics that we're looking for. So WALT of 8 or more years. Earth Trex is by far the largest tenant, and their climbing gym is actually one of the largest in the country, and I believe it's being used in the upcoming Summer Olympics as like a training ground. It's a pretty cool story there. That's a smaller asset that we'd look at purchasing, about 10 million in equity. Interpark here on the right is another triple net lease industrial center in the opposite direction. So this is towards Boulder in Denver, Colorado, and Broomfield. So it's right in the corridor between Denver and Boulder. Again, has a WALT of 8 or more years. It's a newer property, and we've done the financials on that property. It would immediately have cash flow of 6% annually with a weighted average cash flow over 10 years of 8% and a weighted average IRR with equity buildup of about 12%. Another couple assets we're tracking, State Line in Kansas City, Missouri, great asset with a single tenant, Burns and McDonnell, which is a global engineering design firm. It's again just outside, this area is just outside of 2 premier suburb communities, Overland Park and Leawood. It's close to the airport, and that single tenant, I want to say the lease is for 14 plus years. So another safe asset with good cash flow. Roseville Parkway, another single asset, triple net lease property in Roseville, California, so right up near the bay. This is a much larger asset, and it is in California. We include it because it again has the metrics that we're looking for with a long-term credit tenant, but probably not an asset we would look at purchasing unless we saw a huge influx of capital. So now just to touch on TwinRock, the sponsor. TwinRock was founded in 2006, and together with its principals have invested nearly 750 million in real estate with high net worth, ultra high net worth, family offices, and institutional partners. We employ approximately 50 employees between our corporate and property management company, with representatives in California, Nevada, Oklahoma, and Utah. Between Mike and Alex, our 2 principals, they have a combined 80 years of real estate experience, and their bios can be found on our website as well as in most of our marketing material. And I would, again, be happy to provide that to anyone on the call if you'd like me to send it directly. Touch on the investment itself. Minimum investment, $25,000 for accredited investors only. 8% cumulative preferred return. We like to align with investors. That's always been our deal metrics, is to have that 8% cumulative, as well as a low asset management fee of 50 basis points. And we believe our catch-up also is one of the lowest in the industry at 20% or 1.6% after the 8% cumulative return. So those are the deal metrics. Lastly, just to reiterate some reasons to invest in TRELF. First would be liquidity versus traditional private placements. So we are working with an IT partner to, again, potentially list on an exchange in the future, which would give liquidity to all investors. That's different from many other private placements that may lock up your money for 5 to 10 years, depending on the opportunity. We're looking to make that switch potentially 12 to 36 months after fundraising. Fund is seeded with current assets already owned and operated by TwinRock. As I mentioned, we have those 2 assets that are already contributed and a good opportunity to capitalize on some undervalue from both properties. Additionally, I had mentioned the multifamily unit in Oklahoma that we're getting ready to sell. That was going to be seeded into TRELF as well. We had appraised it in early September for $21.5 million, and then we received an off-market offer towards the end of the month for $27 million. And so that was just too good of an opportunity. We felt it necessary to explore that option, and we're actually set to close towards the end of November, and that should be a good win for our investor base. We'll provide a quarterly NAV and annual audits. So again, transparency is important to us. And again, you can always find tax documents, distributions, emails that we've sent you, as well as how the asset is performing through our investor portal. You can also always reach out to me. I'm the VP of Investor Relations, so always happy to keep an investor updated on our offerings. Reputable management team. So as I mentioned, Mike and Alex, over 80 years of real estate experience, and their bios are on our website. Low cost structure and favorable investor splits. We just talked about that. Our 8% preferred return, something that we don't take lightly, as well as just having a low asset management fee. And that has always been our metrics for all previous deals. So with that, thank you, and we will take some questions. First, I'd like to take audio questions. So anyone with an audio question, please hit the raise your hand button now. Okay, I don't see any questions there. So I do see a couple in the queue here. First, how does one invest in this offering? It's a good question. So you do that through our website. You can see on our homepage, the top right corner, there's a sign up login button. That'll take you to our portal page. From there, you'll need to create an account, and then you'll be able to log into our investor portal. Once you're in our portal, you'll see a bunch of information on TRELF, as well as supporting documents. I mentioned to you the 2 appraisals, as well as executive summaries for the seeded properties are on that page. And in the top right-hand corner, you'll see a button that says Invest Now. Simply click that, and it will take you through a 4-step process to invest. Additionally, like I mentioned, you can always reach out to me. I'm happy to run you through that process over the phone. Second question here, how will you offer liquidity in TRELF? So as I mentioned, we are working with IT partners to potentially make this fund more liquid for investors. That would come 12 to 36 months after the close of fundraising. And we would have the ability to list on an exchange where there's ample trading volume. And at that point, all investor interest would become tradable over that exchange. If we do not decide to convert our interests and list on an exchange, then there's a 3-year lockup period with redemptions 12 months after that. So really like a 4-year lockup period. Those are the two ways to receive liquidity in the fund. All right, well, those seem to be the only questions. So feel free to give me a call at 949-356-6887 with other questions, or you can always email me at joe@trp-llc.com. Thanks, everybody.